Hey everybody! When I first got started in the hobby, there were several things that I thought were just sort of universally done in all aquariums. And the reason for this is probably more to do with marketing than with good fish keeping. And one of those things that I thought was a good idea to run in all tanks at all times was a UV clarifier. And I actually spent quite a bit of money in my early days of fish keeping on filters that had UV sterilizers, or clarifiers rather, in them. That's a point I'm going to address here in a minute. They commonly get referred to as sterilizers and UV sterilization and so on and so forth in the hobby, and that's not true. They're not sterilizers. So if you catch me at any point in this video referring to these lights as UV sterilizers, I'm mistaken when I say that. I keep having the tendency to do that. They are UV clarifiers, and since we're addressing it, I may as well continue off on this tangent and say that the difference between a clarifier and a sterilizer is that a sterilizer is an intense enough UV radiation that it will kill protozoan parasites. So I have a UV sterilizer in my water system in my house. All the water that comes out of my well goes through a UV sterilizer, so I don't have to worry about any kind of bacteria. I don't have to worry about any kind of parasites. Nothing makes it through there alive because it's a sterilizer. The UV clarifiers only have enough ultraviolet potency, or a strong enough light to kill bacteria, algae, cyanobacteria, and things of that nature. You're not going to kill any protozoan parasites with the UV clarifiers that we have in our fish tanks. And so again, early on, I just thought these were a good idea. A lot of people, again, in forums, if you read the forum threads discussing them, a lot of people will talk about them as they're a must-have, and you can run them for, you know, a certain amount of time each week, and it'll have all these benefits for your tank, and so on and so forth. So for me, I disagree with that. I found in my experiences that they're not really worth the money, and I don't run them in any of my tanks because there's just no circumstance really where I can see a benefit for them. I'm not saying there's no circumstance out there where they wouldn't, you know, provide some sort of benefit to somebody, but for me, I've never found a benefit for them. So going back to the beginning, I had these UV clarifiers in all my tanks. I went out and I bought clarifiers that were sort of standalone units for tanks that didn't have them. I even found a fairly expensive hang on the back filter that had a UV clarifying light in it, and I ran that on all my tanks all the time. And I found out before too long that the UV light, especially on the cheaper Sun filters, will destroy the plastic on the inside of the aquarium. I mean, the inside of the filter. If you've got a higher quality filter, maybe if you spent a ton of money on a flue vol or something, and you run your UV 24/7, the inside of the flue vol might last longer, but it's still going to deteriorate. The UV is still going to destroy the plastic on the inside of that filter, and eventually you're going to have to replace the trays or the plastic housing or sleeve or whatever the way that filter is designed. It will eventually destroy the inside of that filter if you run it 24/7. So if you run it one day a week or whatever, I'm not really sure what benefit you're going to get from it. For one thing, as we just mentioned, it doesn't do anything other than kill algae or cyanobacteria or something like that. That's why it's called a clarifier. If you've got an algal bloom and you've got green water in your tank, in theory, this clarifier will clear up that green water. In fact, that's why I started buying them in the first place. Early on, I had green water in a few of my tanks, and I figured these clarifiers was the solution. Again, this was when I was very inexperienced. In my experience, it didn't do anything. I had green water in tanks that had green water, and when I ran these UV lights in them, it didn't do squat. It didn't, well, who knows, maybe it prevented them from getting greener. I don't know, but that's the best I could say, is maybe it prevented the tanks from getting greener. I never saw any change whatsoever when I used the clarifying lights. So I really kind of felt like I'd gone around and spent a lot of money. When I finally needed to use one of these clarifying lights for something, it wasn't really doing what it was supposed to be doing. And that was running it 24/7. Had I run it one day a week or something like you're supposed to, so you don't destroy the filter itself, it really would have done nothing. I can't imagine what running that thing 1 day a week would have accomplished. So to me, it almost seems like a gimmick. It just doesn't seem like it really serves any purpose. I've heard people talk about it, you know, preventing ick, and if you've got an outbreak of this kind of parasite or that kind of parasite, but it doesn't. That's, again, that's a myth. That's a misunderstanding, thinking that these clarifiers are sterilizers. And if you had, honestly, if you had ick medication in the tank, the UV sterilizer might do more to disrupt the medication than it would to kill off the parasite. So even if you had a genuine sterilizer in your tank, I just don't see the point of it, the benefit of it. So the times when you would use the clarifier, when you've got green water, or maybe you've got a little disruption in your nitrogen cycle and you'll get that little bit of a bacterial bloom. Again, I'm not sure exactly what's going on with that bacterial bloom, but if you disrupt your nitrogen cycle and you'll get a little bit of a cloudy water for a few days, in theory, the clarifier would kill the bacteria that's causing that cloudiness and you would clear up that water. But in the case of the disrupted nitrogen cycle, unless you've done something dramatic, then your nitrogen cycle is going to swing back in line within a few days and that cloudy water will just clear up and go away. And to me, that's a good thing to leave in the tank. That gives you a good visual idea of what's happening. If it stays cloudy over time, you're going to want to know about that. So clarifying that, I think, would be the wrong move. I think if you disrupted your nitrogen cycle and you did have that little bloom of cloudy water, the best thing to do is to watch that, do some small water changes, and within a few days that should swing back into line. Artificially clarifying it is going to sort of prevent you from being able to gauge how well your cycle is doing, because if the cycle is working properly, you shouldn't have the cloudy water, and therefore you shouldn't need to use this UV clarifier. Again, you're only going to have cloudy water for a couple of days and then it's going to clear up on you. The other time you would use it is if you had green water. Now this could be from bacteria, cyanobacteria, or it could be from algae. In either case, it's the same principle behind it. If you've got green water, address the issue that's causing green water. Don't just try to kill the algae that's swirling around in the water. Try to figure out why you've got algae swirling around in your water. Now, I'll be honest with you, I don't know exactly what I did either to cause my green water or to clear up my green water back in the day, but I suspect it was a combination of things. I started doing less feeding, I started doing more maintenance, more frequent water changes, I started giving less light on the tank, and things like that. And over time, the water has cleared up. And I don't get issues with cloudy water or green water in my tanks anymore. Tannin stained water still counts as clear water. And to me, detritus, you know, like when the fish swim around and they kick stuff up and it's swirling around, that also is still clear water. It's just got particulate, you know, stuff in it. Cloudy water is when you've got that bacterial bloom or green water, something like that. That is what one of these UV lights is meant to address. And again, I never had any luck with it addressing the green water, and my feeling is rather than use a sterilizing clarifier on it, or I'm sorry, again, not a sterilizer, but rather than using the clarifying light on it, address the issue, clear up the water, and then you don't have green water. And if you don't have green water, you don't need to use one of these UV lights. Other than those purposes, I have no idea why you would ever just run the light. And again, I used to all the time. In all my tanks, I used to just let a UV light run 24/7. And my belief at the time was, why not? It ain't hurting anything. You know, and then of course, come to find out, it's destroying the inside of my filters. It's wasting electricity. And it's serving no purpose really, the vast majority of the time. So if you know why one would come in handy, if you've had an experience where it really did benefit you in some way, or there's some certain circumstance where you can think of these being useful, I'd be interested to hear what your experiences or your opinion is. But to me, they just kind of seem like a gimmick. They just seem totally unnecessary. If you've got green water, address the issue, and then you won't need the UV light in the first place. If you've got cloudy water from a disrupted nitrogen cycle, you know, that's going to swing back in line within a few days. And as I said, you kind of want to be able to see that cloudy water to gauge what's going on in the tank. If you artificially clear that up, that's your one thing that you could have looked at to really see what's going on in your tank, and you've just taken that away from yourself. So I wouldn't use it under those circumstances anyway. I would still let the cloudiness just sort of clear up on its own over a few day period, and you should be back to normal. So those are my 2 cents. I'd like to hear yours, so leave a comment down below. Thanks for watching this one. Don't forget to subscribe. You never know what you're going to get with me. Thanks again. I'll see you real soon in the next one.